fortunate enough to be assistant to the Honorable Elijah Muhammad in both the educational expansion and the business expansion for our community. I became a member of the Nation of Islam in 1966, and in 1967, I got my master's degree in educational psychology, and I wrote my thesis on the educational system of the Nation of Islam in California. So in 1968, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's office gave me a call. We lived in Fresno, California, where I was an educator. His office called me and said, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad would like to see you in Phoenix at his office. And he said to bring your wife. Mary Ali was my wife, is my wife. So my wife and I, we traveled to Phoenix. We were picked up at the airport by some of the staff of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad, and they took us to his home on Violet Drive. We were met at the door by Brother Albert Kareem. Some of you might know Brother Albert Kareem. He was a faithful helper of the Honorable Elijah Muhammad. Brother Albert Kareem met us at the door. He took us to our room on the second floor, and he said, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is asking that you spend the night with us, which we were pleased to hear and also shocked. He said, but first of all, we want you to fresh yourself and get ready to go down to dinner at 4 o'clock to see the Honorable Elijah Muhammad and have dinner. So at 4 o'clock, we went downstairs. Honorable Elijah Muhammad was seated at the head of the table, and he seated me to his left, and he seated my wife to my left. And he began to ask me questions about me and my family, what was I doing and what were my plans. And then he said, brother, I want to explain to you what my plans are. He said, I plan to expand the University of Islam all over the United States. He said, presently we only have 2 schools that are full-time schools and that are really functioning good, and that's in Detroit, Michigan, and in Chicago, Illinois. He said, but now I want to spread the University of Islam all over the United States. So he said, I'm appointing you the director of education for the western region of the United States. And he said, and concurrently, I'm appointing Brother Clark X out of New York. Oh, he told me my base would be in Los Angeles, California, at that time, temple number 27. And he said, Brother Clark in New York, he will handle the eastern region of the United States, and his base will be temple number 7 in New York City. Brother Muhammad, would you come up and help me, please? Hold it up a little higher. The western region of the United States. My region was here, covering everything from Washington down to Arizona over to Colorado. That's the western region. He wanted me to cover that region and to establish universities of Islam in those regions where I could. Brother Clark was to have the eastern region, which started up here in Massachusetts, all the way down to Florida, over to Ohio. And his job was to establish universities of Islam in that region. And the center region was supposed to be handled by the director of education there in Chicago. I think at that time it was Sister Agneta Rasu. So we began our task, we began our work, and I'll tell you, it was not an easy task, but it was not an easy task, but it was very, very enjoyable. Okay, Muhammad, you can come back. Matter of fact, just stay right there. I guess I can sit back down, but I got someone else to tell you too. So, secondly, now this was in 1968. So from 1968 until 1972, I was established in schools and doing my duty as Elijah Muhammad instructed me to. And in 1972, he sent for me to come to Chicago. Matter of fact, he moved my whole family to Chicago. He invited me to come to Chicago, and he said, He said, I have a plan for our people. He said, our people really needs their economic condition is very, very dire. He said, in order to raise the economic condition of our people, he said, we have to help them. And he said, my vision is food, clothing, and shelter. He said, if we can submit and give to our people food at a very low price, shelter at a low price, and clothing at a low price, it will automatically raise their standard of living. You see the wisdom in that? So we started out. He spent $3 million. He bought a shipload of product from Japan and Korea of household goods, dishes, household goods, other things, and it came into the port of Oakland. And as it was in the port of Oakland, that's when he called me because his good was in the port of Oakland. He said, I have $3 million that's tied up there in the ports, and I need those things distributed. He said, I think you can do it. So I was very happy to try. But anyway, I thought about it, and we already had an automatic system of distribution. That's the Muhammad Speak newspaper. Every week, those Muhammad Speak newspaper, and I think Brother Shaw mentioned that 1 million copies were being sold on a weekly basis there. So every week, these papers were going out by plane, by rail, by truck. So Sister Arlene Elamine, she lives in Minnesota, she used to be John Ali's secretary. Well, Elijah Muhammad let her come and help me as an assistant. That sister was very, very tops. We cataloged all of those goods, $3 million worth, and we priced them. And we started the temples to ordering these goods and shipping them out to the different masjids. And we recouped the Honorable Elijah Muhammad's $3 million, and we had some money left over. So after the $3 million recouping of his goods, he said, now, brother, come on now. He said, I really have a project for you now. He said, the last one is food, because many of you know, or some of you that lived in Chicago, you know that the Honorable Elijah Muhammad bought homes all over Chicago, and he leased them out to the believers at a very low price. And he did this for years, and he was buying farmland. He was really moving. But this time he said, we're going to embark on the food portion. He said, the Bible says that the corn is in the fish's mouth. So he said, I want you to go I want you to research the world. Anywhere in the world where you find the best and the cheapest fish, we will buy it. And we're going to buy in large quantities, because if we buy in large quantities, we can reduce the price, and we will then pass this price on to our brothers and sisters. He didn't want to sell it to everybody. He just wanted to sell it to the lost found Negroes of the United States. So he was limiting our way to sell. But fortunate enough, he did this one other thing. He hired a gentleman, Mr. Alishan Dober. He was a Turkish Muslim, and he had a shipping company there in New York. He was a shipping magnate. He hired Mr. Dober. He paid Mr. Dober he paid him $50 million a year just to train us in international trade, because we didn't know about international trade. So Mr. Dober came on board. He trained us how to open letters of credit, how to do contracts, how to do everything in international business. He was really, really brilliant in this, and he was unselfish in helping us do all these things. And as we developed, we researched the whole world, and we found that the best and the lowest priced fish was in Peru. So we embarked, and we went to Peru. We traveled to Peru. Elijah Muhammad's grandson, Sultan Muhammad, who was fluent in Spanish, Mr. Dober and myself, we flew to Peru. And he said, another thing, he said, do not negotiate with any middle people. We're not dealing with middle people. We're only dealing with governments. He said, our government to another government. So don't deal with middle people. So we dealt with the government of Peru. We drew a contract up, 36 million pounds of fish a year. Each shipment of fish that came into the United States, 3 million pounds a month. Every month, 3 million pounds of fish came into the United States of America. And it came in there. It came into the port. Brother Muhammad, pick the map up again. I'll tell you where these ports came in. This is what actually happened. Okay, we had fish coming into the port of Los Angeles. We had fish coming into Moly, Alabama. We had fish coming into New York City. We had fish coming into Savannah, Georgia. And this fish, the Los Angeles group, who was a very powerful and and diligent group. They sold a lot of whiting H&G. I think Brother Shaw and Imam Hassan will vouch to that. They sold, and they cover this whole western region. Brother, and over here in New York, we didn't have Brother Clark was still with the educational field, so I couldn't use him. But another brother, Shamsuddin, helped me do all the distribution there. And here we had the southern region was covered. We did it by truck. We did it by rail. We did it by plane. We covered the United States with fish. I'll tell you, only this 3 million pounds coming in every month and 36 million pounds coming in a year, we're talking about $50 million coming into this community every single year. That was a stimulus to everybody. Okay, brother, you can have it. Now, what was so great about this is that if you know, my time is out, if you know that, there's one thing I want to say. If you remember this idea of bringing in goods at a low price and then selling it, guess who did it? You ever heard of Walmart? They copied the online, they copied him. They did it, but only they weren't reducing the price so low that, and they were selling to everybody. But anyway, we sold to just our people, and I tell you, it was very successful. One more thing I want to say. In 1975, the Library of Congress stated that the Nation of Islam imported more fish into the United States than any company in the history of America. Look, this is a man with a third-grade education. And if you had to be, if Allah, sallallahu to Allah, Allah had his guidance and his blessing had not been with this community, it never would have happened. Takbir!